let me leave it at that. Stand for questions. We have our key chairs here to respond to your questions. And
what do you mean when you say something about everyone's ready to share the sacrifice, and you think it should be especially those who should most easily afford it?
no, I didn't say. I said with regards to the revenue side.
Yeah.
We do not plan on increasing tax burdens on those least able to afford.
You talk about the most able to afford.
Yes, on the revenue side. Because keep in mind, on the cut side we're most heavily hit, the most needy in the society. That's kind of the way it works. And to the extent that you make cuts in the healthcare area, you put families and individuals at risk. So what my reference, Don, was to, on the revenue side, we're going to be looking for a revenue package that is aimed toward those most able to pay in the current circumstance.
Does that mean income tax?
Let me defer to Senator Bach.
Well, first let me make something clear about the governor's budget. The governor's budget is an admission that he needs revenue to balance his budget. You know, the idea of selling the tobacco bond, pledging future revenue for the next 20 years out of the tobacco settlement, and scoring just short of $1 billion in revenue in this biennium for that, is an admission he needs revenue. So just let me be clear. The governor has new revenue in his budget. In addition to the tobacco bond, when the Commissioner of Revenue was in front of the Tax Committee probably 3 weeks ago now and was going through the governor's budget, I asked the question. I said, Commissioner, what are the potential property tax impacts in the governor's budget? And he gave us a preliminary number, and he said, well, kind of the preliminary number of what we think is going to happen is we will see $300 million of property tax increases next year. And in the year beyond that, the 300 plus an additional 250. That's $850 million in property tax increases in the governor's budget. Now, that number, I want to be very careful about this. The commissioner described that as a preliminary number on their review of the governor's tax bill. So I think for anybody to say that the governor's not raising revenue, I just don't think is fair. $1 billion in tobacco bonds, $850 million in property taxes are tax increases.
What about your budget, though? Based on ability to pay, is that code for upper income tax?
Well, the tax incidence study was released this week, and next Tuesday, the department's going to come in and we're going to do a review of that in the tax committee. And I expect we're going to learn what we learned last time, and that is that the net effective tax rates of Minnesotans by income deciles, that as your income goes up, especially when you start getting over $250,000 in household income, your tax rate goes down. And I haven't looked at the most recent report, but you've all read in the newspaper that middle income taxpayers in Minnesota pay about 12.3% of their income in state and local taxes. And as you get more towards upper income people, that number drops to about 9%. I expect to see that that data reconfirmed next week when we hear the tax incidence study. And it's not a new proposal on the part of the Senate. For a number of years, we have tried to flatten off that tax burden so that everybody pays roughly the same proportion of their income in taxes. And I do think that some kind of a proposal in the Senate tax bill that does that tries to move closer towards, we're not going to get all over it, but move closer towards everybody paying kind of the same proportionate share of their income in taxes is a good goal, and I think something that most Minnesotans support. Now, having said that, let me just tell you what I don't support, so that we're real clear about this. I don't support and do not expect to have in the tax bill a sales tax on clothing. I don't support and have no intentions of including in the tax bill an expansion of the sales tax to services. People have been talking about accounting services and legal services. I don't expect sales tax extensions to be in the Senate tax bill either. So I just want to be clear about that. And we've still got some work to do with members of the tax committee and the members of the Senate to figure out, we've got to find 34 votes for something on the floor of the Senate. And I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I just kind of lay out for you what I think will be included, and at this point, what I've kind of taken off the table is not being up for consideration.
Chairman, can you property tax implications of your proposal?
I expect that at this point in time, at least, my view is they'd be minimal.
Chairman, that would include the state business property tax as well as the residential property tax?
Well, I guess I'd have to look at some runs and see what's currently happening because of the housing crisis and how market values, different classes of property values are moving around a lot right now. So the net impact on the property tax burden kind of depends on how market values are moving around. So I don't think it's going to be a different impact on different property taxpayers. I think, absent us doing anything.
Sure. Doesn't cutting K-12 mean that there will be property tax increases as schools levy more?
I think the governor's position is it's not a tax increase if people vote for it.
So that's the DFL position now too?
I don't think I think in this market, I think it's unlikely people are going to vote for property tax increases.
Let me, on that point, something we want to point two things out on the cuts. In that first biennium, we know we're getting federal stimulus money, and so the 10 and 11 number does not factor in what we're going to do with that federal stimulus money yet, because we don't exactly know. So you perhaps will see a little lower number because you can use some one-time federal stimulus money in the education area. Commissioner Hansen is in Washington, D.C. right now trying to get better information on what we're going to do. So we'll be working with the governor to minimize unnecessary short-term cuts. But the thing to focus on is that long-term, you genuinely have to bring down your cost structure at that 7% in the out years if you're going to balance the budget. And we want to point out, and we're not being critical because the governor's coming back with another budget, but his initial budget was $2.5 billion out of balance. What we've just suggested, recommended, is in balance over 4 years. We presume the governor will erase that number with his next proposal so that he will be in balance also. He just signed a bill a week and a half ago that says we're going to have 4-year balance. And so we anticipate this again. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying this is his original budget with the law that says it's going to be 4 years. He will erase that presumably in his next budget with either cuts or, as I say, he could go up to our level of cuts and that still won't get him there, but he would have to add revenue then. Or he could go beyond our cuts. Today he's not beyond our cuts. He's $1 billion short of our cuts. But he could both go further than $1 billion more in cuts or add additional revenue. But it's going to have to be some permanent revenue, otherwise you can't get a 4-year balance. And we know there will be a disagreement on the level of cuts in revenue perhaps, but we think it's important to engage that disagreement and come to a joint solution that is balanced, fair, and structurally taken care of for the long-term interest of Minnesota. And that will be a bipartisan solution, because it has to be. He's the governor, and the legislature is of a different political party. But I presume that many of the things we're going to do in the Senate, and I'll just speak for the Senate, I believe they will be bipartisan. Not everything. Some of these things I don't expect that there perhaps may not be bipartisan support, but I believe many of these things will be done bipartisan.